Good morning. I'm George Kahn, and I'll be your host for today's Quiet Echo. I want to start with two people. They used to come into the deli kitchen together every Saturday morning. Same table, same order, same time. I knew them as a pair the way you know certain regulars. You stop thinking of them as individuals and you think of them as the thing they are together. They were the kind of friendship. About 2 years ago, they stopped coming together. Now they come separately, at different hours, and each one navigates the room carefully to avoid the other. Both of them have told me their version of what happened on the day it ended. The two versions have almost nothing in common. I have thought about this a lot. Neither one is lying. Neither one is misremembering on purpose. Something was said, something was heard, and the two things were different enough. Two people who spent 20 years knowing each other have not spoken since. That is what I want to talk about today. Not the dramatic fractures, not the obvious betrayals. The quiet gap between what we say and what the other person hears. The one almost nobody sees coming until the damage is already done. A researcher named Dr. Bose Kesar at the University of Chicago has spent years studying exactly this. His finding is one of those things where, once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. We expect the people we are closest to, our partners, our oldest friends, our siblings, to understand us best. We believe the relationship earns us a kind of shorthand, a way of being known without having to explain everything. What Kesar found is the opposite is often true. The closer we are to someone, the more we assume they understand us, and the more we assume, the less carefully we say what we actually mean. He calls it the closeness communication bias. We overestimate how clearly we have spoken to the people who matter most. And so the message arrives incomplete, and the other person fills in what is missing with their own assumptions, which may have nothing to do with what we intended. This is not a small problem. Businesses in the United States lose more than $1 trillion a year to miscommunication. Medical errors from communication failures between caregivers account for $1.7 billion in malpractice costs and nearly 2,000 preventable deaths in one study alone. These are the losses we can count. The marriages, the partnerships, the families, the friendships. There is no ledger for those. I run a deli. I am not a therapist, but I have watched enough Cedar Valley relationships fracture over my counter to understand where the break usually starts. It rarely starts with what was said. It starts with what was heard, and those are often not the same thing. Here is what I mean. Someone says, "I am fine." What they mean is, "I am not fine, but I do not know how to ask for what I need right now." What the other person hears is, "I am fine." They move on. And the distance between those two people grows by exactly the width of what was not said. Someone says, "You always do this." What they mean is, "I am in pain and I am reaching for the only language I have access to right now." What the other person hears is, "You are the kind of person who always does this." An accusation about character, not a cry from pain. They defend instead of listen. The conversation closes. Sometimes it does not open again for 2 years. Sometimes it does not open again at all. I have been misread my whole life. I know what it feels like to have someone decide what you are before you have finished speaking. I know what it costs. I also know what it feels like to be the one deciding to hear something and jump to the conclusion and miss the actual message entirely. I have done it to people I love. I have paid for it. Most of us have. What Kesar's research points toward is not complicated, but it requires something most people resist: slowing down long enough to check, not assuming the message landed the way it was sent, asking, "Did you hear what I meant?" Or saying, "I do not think it came out right. Can I try again?" These feel unnecessary with people we are close to. They feel like doubt. They are not doubt. They are care in its plainest form. They are saying, "This relationship is worth the extra sentence." My 2 Saturday regulars. One of them told me last month he has thought about reaching out but does not know how to start. I told him what I am telling Cedar Valley this morning. You start by saying, "I think what I said came out wrong. I would like to try again." It is all it takes. It does not fix everything, but it opens the door. And most of the time, the other person has been standing on the other side of it, waiting for someone to knock, not knowing how to start either. The gap between what we say and what is heard is not usually malice. It is not usually difference. It is usually just the assumption of understanding where understanding was never confirmed. The closeness we worked years to build becomes the very thing we rely on instead of doing the work of saying what we actually mean. Cedar Valley is full of relationships carrying the assumption. Some of them are still intact. Some of them are across the room from each other at different tables, coming in at different hours, navigating carefully. The distance between those tables is not as wide as it looks. If there is someone in Cedar Valley you have been meaning to reach back out to, someone the silence has gone on too long with, you are not the only one. The Cedar Valley News Facebook group is where the conversation continues. I will put the link in the show notes. This is George Kahn, your host for today's Quiet Echo. Thanks for listening. This Quiet Echo is part of the fictional Cedar Valley News series, written by Evan Swenson, publisher, publication consultants, and Claude Marshall, AI developmental editor. While the people and town of Cedar Valley are fictional, Dr. Bose Kesar's research on the closeness communication bias is real.
You've been listening to the Cedar Valley News Podcast, where small-town voices meet the headlines shaping our world. From faith and family to front porches and fields. We'll be back with more stories connecting real lives to real events. Until next time, keep your porch light on, your faith strong, and your heart open. This is Cedar Valley News.